Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to dig into one of the most powerful and honestly, most misunderstood ideas in all of economics, trade. It's a concept that secretly shapes pretty much everything, from the global economy all the way down to who does the dishes in your house. So, let's see how it all works.
Just for a second, think about your morning. That first sip of coffee, the phone you're probably scrolling through right now. Where did it all come from? The truth is, you're relying on this huge, totally invisible network of people to make your day possible. People you'll never ever meet.
I mean, every single day, we are connected to countless people all over the planet. And this unbelievably complex web, well, it wasn't designed by some genius planner in an office somewhere. It's all made possible by one simple, incredibly powerful idea: people trading with each other.
To really get how this works, we're going to strip away all the crazy complexity of the real world for a minute. We're going to look at a super simple two-person economy. And this classic little story is going to make the powerful logic of trade totally click. So, in our little world, there are only two things people want: meat and potatoes. And there are only two people: Ruby the rancher and Frank the farmer. Now, if Ruby only made meat and Frank only grew potatoes, it's pretty obvious why they'd trade, right? But here's the twist. What happens if one person is actually better at doing both?
Let's look at the numbers here. As you can see, Ruby is way more productive than Frank at everything. It takes her less time to produce an ounce of meat, and it takes her less time to produce an ounce of potatoes. So, logically, you'd think she has absolutely no reason to trade with Frank. I mean, should she just go it alone?
Well, if they decide to be totally self-sufficient, there's a hard limit on what they can have. It's simple. You can't eat what you don't produce. So let's imagine Frank splits his time and ends up with 4 ounces of meat and 16 potatoes. And Ruby, she ends up with 12 ounces of meat and 24 potatoes. This is their starting point, their baseline.
But then one day, Ruby gets this crazy idea. She goes to Frank with a proposal that honestly seems to completely defy logic.
Ruby lays out this plan. She tells Frank that if they just work together in trade, they can both end up with more meat and more potatoes. And they won't even have to work any extra hours. Now, Frank's got to be thinking, no way. It just sounds too good to be true.
Okay, so here's the deal she proposes. Step 1. Frank specializes. He totally stops making meat and puts all his time into growing potatoes, which gets him 32 ounces. Step 2. Ruby adjusts her work, focusing mostly on meat, making 18 ounces and only 12 ounces of potatoes. Then the final step. They trade. Frank gives Ruby 15 of his potatoes, and in return, she gives him 5 ounces of her meat.
So, what's the end result of this seemingly magical deal? Well, the numbers don't lie. Look at this. Frank now has 5 ounces of meat and 17 potatoes. That's more of both. And Ruby? She has 13 ounces of meat and 27 potatoes. She also has more of both. They are, without a doubt, both better off. It actually worked.
Okay, this brings us right back to that central puzzle. We've seen that the deal works, but we still don't really know why. How on earth can Ruby, the person who's better at literally everything, still gain from trading with someone who's less productive? The answer, it turns out, lies in two really key economic ideas.
The secret here isn't about being the best at everything. It's about being the most efficient with your time. So let's break down the two concepts that make this whole thing possible.
So first up is this idea called absolute advantage. And honestly, this one is super straightforward. It just means you can produce something using fewer resources, like time. In our story, Ruby clearly has the absolute advantage in both meat and potatoes, because it just takes her less time to make each one. But, and this is a huge but, that is not the whole story.
And that brings us to the really crucial concept, opportunity cost. If you only learn one thing from this, let it be this. It's one of the most important ideas in all of economics. See, the real cost of doing anything isn't about the money. It's about the next best thing you had to give up to do it. So for Frank and Ruby, the cost of producing more potatoes is the meat they could have produced in that same amount of time, and vice versa.
Now this table right here, this reveals everything. Let's just calculate their trade-offs. For Frank to make 1 ounce of meat, it takes him an hour. In that same hour, he could have made 4 ounces of potatoes. So for him, the opportunity cost of one meat is 4 potatoes. For Ruby, it only takes 20 minutes to make an ounce of meat. In that time, she could have made 2 ounces of potatoes, so her opportunity cost for meat is lower, just 2 potatoes. But now, let's flip it and look at potatoes. For Frank to make 1 ounce of potatoes, he only gives up making a 1/4 ounce of meat. But for Ruby to make that same ounce of potatoes, she has to give up a 1/2 ounce of meat, and that is the key.
Frank actually gives up less to make potatoes. He has the lower opportunity cost. And that brings us to the big idea, the grand finale, comparative advantage. This just means being able to produce something at a lower opportunity cost. So even though Ruby has an absolute advantage in everything, it turns out Ruby has a comparative advantage in meat, and Frank has a comparative advantage in potatoes. That is the secret sauce. That's why they both win when they specialize in what they're least bad at and then trade.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory about ranchers and farmers. This principle is working all around us, all the time, often in some really surprising ways. Let's just look at a couple of real-world examples that might hit closer to home.
Okay, here's a fun one. Should Serena Williams mow her own lawn? Let's just assume she is the fastest lawnmower in the entire world. She has the absolute advantage, no question. But in the 2 hours it would take her, she could go film a commercial and earn, say, $30,000. That's her opportunity cost. Now let's say the kid next door. He takes 4 hours to do it. In that time, his opportunity cost is just the $50 he would have earned at his part-time job. The kid has the comparative advantage. It makes all the economic sense in the world for Serena to film that commercial and just pay the kid to mow the lawn.
And believe it or not, this exact same logic applies right inside our own homes. Think about household chores for a minute. It's often true that one person in a household is just faster and better at pretty much everything, from cooking to cleaning to laundry. So does that mean that person should just do it all?
According to the economist Emily Oster, absolutely not. For maximum household efficiency, you should divide up the chores based on comparative advantage. So if one person is way better at cooking but only a little bit better at washing dishes, they should do the cooking, and the other person should wash the dishes. It's all about minimizing the total opportunity cost for the whole family.
So let's tie this all together and wrap this up by looking at the simple but really profound lesson from our story of Frank and Ruby. Here's the bottom line. Trade is not about one person winning and another person losing. It's what we call a positive-sum game. When people, companies, and even whole countries specialize in what they have a comparative advantage in, the total amount of stuff produced in the world goes up. The whole economic pie gets bigger, and that means there's more for everyone. And, this is not some radical new idea. The father of modern economics himself, Adam Smith, was writing about this very principle way back in 1776. This core logic, that we all get richer by focusing on what we do best and trading for the rest, has been a cornerstone of economic thinking for centuries. So the next time you divide up a project at work, or you're splitting chores at home, or you just buy a cup of coffee made from beans grown halfway across the world, you'll understand the hidden principle that's making it all possible. It's not just a transaction. It's the power of comparative advantage making everyone, including you, better off. So now that you know the secret, where are you going to spot it next?